I was backpacking every day my challenges of yesterday. I hadn't accepted it and leave it and moved on from yesterday. So yesterday was still happening all day, every day.
Right, and that prevents you from focusing on the todays and tomorrows.
Completely. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Brothers Building Blocks Casual Conversation Series. We are your hosts, Joel Guzman and Sergio Adams. Today's topic is on mental health. Mental health for us is unique, and as men, I find it's even more unique because
Hispanic, Caribbean, Black,
in our
African
cultures,
men.
we are not necessarily taught to be accepting of the emotions that we experience. We are taught the opposite. It does not exist. You must not show it. You must not experience it. You must not ever cry.
Right.
But I must tell you, I had quite a fantastic crying experience for my father, wishing that the blasted man was there, but he never showed up.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I cried for him, I would think I was age 12, but I knew I cried before then as well. I ran home. This is a little bit graphic. I ran home because I was engaging in experiences I should not have been engaging in. It's my first time
Yeah, man.
the first time I ejaculated.
Okay,
right?
so you
and
were
I thought I was going to die.
having some sexual experiences already.
And so
You were in high school, or?
it doesn't matter. I ran home because I believed I was about to die. Something was happening to my body. I was convulsing. I didn't know that was normal.
Okay.
So I ran home in the hopes that when I get home, I can talk to my father. I had forgotten that I've never met my father. I have no idea what he looks like.
Oh.
But I believe that when I get home, he's going to be there and I can tell him that I'm about to die. But before I die, he's going to explain to me why my body is convulsing this way and what is, coming out of my body. And I think I was about a block away from home. And then I remembered, oh crap, but your father doesn't live there. You don't know what the man looks like. You don't even know his name. So he's definitely not going to be here today, because you're going to die. Oh well. So I decided to change tactic. I'll just go home and say goodbye to my mother, And that for me was quite profound. At the end of that experience, later in the night, all I wanted to do is curl up into a ball and just sleep and cry. Mainly because my father's not there to give me the support and the structure that I wanted and I needed. And especially for me at a pivotal moment like this, the coming of age of a man, the man experiencing his manhood, and then there's no guidance or instructions. What is usually a very exciting and rewarding experience, I associated with death. I mean, how stupid is that? But not necessarily stupid, it was just that it was lacking information.
Right.
Yeah, so I find mental health is really important. It's really important to experience the emotions associated with situations that we are experiencing. And oftentimes when we refuse to allow ourselves to be at peace or at ease with that emotion, it does create a problem because the brain is not getting the full range of that emotion.
It's the buildup of all of that inside that you're choosing to internalize. And you need to release the valve. And
Definitely.
There's ways in which we release the valve, and one way is through communication. But what are some of the other ways in which you can release those emotions so that you don't become unwell?
Let's see. I'll answer it with this story. As you know, I served in the military, U.S. military here, and part of that experience was quite traumatic for me because I was a victim of a very bizarre sequence of events. I was
in the beginning, right?
No, it's towards the ending of that tour. I experienced sexual assault, But in the military, it's a difficult thing for, I think, most servicemen to speak of for those who might have experienced it. But in my experience, I had no one to speak with. I did not know who to speak with because this was such a frowned upon matter. But yet I was the victim of it. And in that victimhoodness, I experienced something even more profound. Because I experienced this in my childhood, I felt or experienced a relapse. So I no longer was experiencing life as a functioning man. I was feeling trapped into that childhood state of who had once suffered this thing. So at the end of that military experience, I had to unpack all of this. And the trauma of those experiences was such that there was a certain amount of fear humiliation and other emotions of the kind that were overwhelming the experience, so that I only paid attention to the humiliation and the fear, but not the problem that occurred, or that the problem that I was really suffering. So it was like a compound fracture, or a compound emotional challenge. And it took me a number of years to finally allow that healing to occur. One, I was seeking it. Look for a psychologist, therapist, friends, family. They all said no. Strangely enough, they all said no. So when I was in college, one of the reasons why I did pursue a psychology degree was to medicate my own self, to give myself self-therapy, to help me to understand and take ownership of what I can take ownership of, because before then, I faulted myself for all of it. It's my fault. It has to be my fault. But how does the victim say it's his fault when the victim is not the one who perpetrated those acts or actions, So to unpack all of that was really a tiring and trying experience. But it was necessary and needed so that I can function or be functional in society. What I find was also a bit unique is that I spoke to some of my male friends at the time and I said, hey, guess what? This happened to me. And I really want to talk about it because it's burdening my brain, And unfortunately, in those times, and not really to the fault of them, they're like, oh, it's your fault. You made this happen. It's your fault. But those were the exact statements I was saying to myself of myself, right? So that didn't really help. That was just compounded challenge.
More. And did it reinforce?
No, it didn't
your
reinforce.
Thought of yourself?
Not at all. But it didn't. The emotions that I was suppressing of guilt and shame and the like was just resurfaced. Like, here's the shame again. Like, why did this thing have to happen in the first place? Why didn't you defend yourself? Why didn't you pick up some weapon and attempt to use it to get out of that situation? Like anything that you think of that you can use after the effect, right? To have a different outcome. So for me, when I was speaking to my friends and they were unable to provide the support that I was seeking, I knew then that I need to take a break, stop speaking to anyone else, and go and find the help for yourself someplace where there will be a judgment-free zone where a person can listen to you extemporaneously and then help you sort it out. But that judgment-free zone, that free space that I needed, didn't find. So I had to create it for myself. Hence, those degrees that I pursued. Not necessarily because I want to work as a psychologist, but because I wanted to work and help myself undo the challenge and the trauma that I suffered. Yeah.
And then by extension, now with all that knowledge, you can help others.
Well, that was not the immediate
right.
sought goal. As I said, my exploration of learning was not because I wanted to work in this field, it was because I wanted help. And everywhere I turned prior did not work. Subsequently, however, that did happen, and that was just like, I want to say, mere coincidence. So after completing that degree of psychology, helping myself shortly afterwards, feeling relieved and release of the challenge and the trauma, I found myself in a space where I am now providing mental health counseling to people who were suffering similar traumas in their own lived experiences. So it was easier now, relatively easier, to help those because I had a reference point. And while it took me approximately 5 years to sort it out, in the counseling, it took me a short amount of time because now I know how to do it, or how to unpack, decode, deconstruct, and then to relabel and repackage and heal, So that was very inspiring because I didn't want to necessarily accept others were victims just like I was. I wanted to believe that I was the only one who such an egregious act happened to, which really magnifies how problematic it was in my brain. It's like, you of all people, this happened to. Like, could you had to be the only unlucky person born that year for this thing to have happened to. But in the space where I am now being of service to others who are victims of similar trauma and others, that for me was inspiring.
So to answer the question, which you did within your answer, the way you were able to solve it was, since you didn't find anyone to help you, and you did search. This isn't as though you just said, "No one's here to help me," right? You weren't feeling sorry for yourself. You actually went out and sought an answer, but you couldn't find one. There was none about. Internet was probably still pretty new. You couldn't just go on YouTube, and so here you go, and you say, well, now I'm in university. I'm finished with this experience. I'm going to use education to get the answer. I don't need the degree. I just need the information. I just need the knowledge, which is something profound there, right? We don't need necessarily the piece of paper that says you're certified in this. You just need the diligence to go out and pick up the book and read and learn for yourself, right, so that you can have the knowledge and then apply it.
The application for me was important because I sought an end to the malady I was experiencing. The malady was the challenge of something happened to you. You don't like it. You don't like what you think of yourself, what you are feeling for yourself. And then no one is aware of this. So this was a very lonesome, isolating experience. And so the due diligence on my part to not give up, to not quit, to not fall apart completely, to remain present, compartmentalized like crazy. Good grief. I thought myself, well, I must say, before I did go there, it was very difficult to function altogether because I was constantly reminded of what happened.
After the experience?
After the experience.
After it had ended. Okay.
Right? And so after the military, now I'm back in civilian life. The manner of living was really challenging because as a civilian, as a human being, you get up, you go to work, you get up, you go to school, you get up, you go to the bathroom. But every act that I made was accompanied by the memories of what happened. So I was constantly carrying this garment of shame and humiliation and memory of bad deeds happening to you. So all day, every day, I was miserable. But I did not demonstrate or display my miserable experience outwardly. That is, I wasn't wearing my emotions on my sleeve. But right underneath, all you just poke me a little bit hard, and I will deflate or explode in whichever manner. So I knew that needed to be righted. And I wanted it to be righted because I had goals for myself. I wanted to achieve certain life goals. And I didn't want to divorce myself of those goals that I'd created for myself. And in my view, the only way in which I can achieve these life goals that I really wanted to experience was to reduce the problem, or at least to get rid of the problem. And since, as I said before, I didn't have the support of my family, the support of my friends or acquaintances that I reached out to, or any mental health care provider. One actually attempted, but I didn't like their method. They wanted to do it online in a form of a texting sort of manner. This was the early 2000s. And so I didn't really find that to be personable enough. And I didn't really trust that. I don't know who I'm really sending my messages to. So, right, you know, I need to see the person. I want to see their reaction. I want to make sure that when I speak, they don't go off and say, yes, this is your fault. You're so stupid. How dare you? You know? And so I didn't continue. So helping myself was really paramount because, as I said, under the surface, it was like a raging torrent of emotions.
You know, so I think it's important to note, this wasn't a flip of the switch and then you were well because you had the answer. This was, you found the answer and then you had to apply the answer to your lived experiences and then practice it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So the application it was key for me. When I found the answer.
Which was?
How do I say the answer in this unique way? The answer was that, look, you need to go back and relive what happened to you. And then you need to take ownership of what you can take ownership of. If you are at fault, fine. Accept it, move on. If you are not at fault, fine. Accept it, move on. And the moving on is what is challenging, because you still remember what happened. You still have the emotions associated with what happened. But the simplicity of that healing is acceptance. Something has happened. You can't do anything about it anymore because it has happened. It's past tense. So all you have to do now is accept that it has happened, divorce yourself of that emotion that you once held on to, and then move on from that. And there's where the biggest challenge reside. So I read psychology, anthropology, philosophy, looking for the answer on how to overcome a challenge or to accept a challenge that has happened. Fortunately, they led me into the direction of finding the answer, and that was the Bible. When I read the Bible, with the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time, I was looking for information that helped me to understand why it is in life that people must experience these kind of challenges. Like, why must we be victims of circumstances? And the why question was not really necessarily being answered in the way in which I wanted to. So I decided to stop and then go back to it, because I was looking for, in my view, the answer in the wrong approach. What approach I did conjure up was another that looks like this. What is the human experience? And what must the human experience accompany? In essence, what does every human being have to experience in order for them to have a full lived experience? And in that space, I discovered that every human being will experience a variety of challenges that is engineered to either prove their identity, cultivate their identity, or secure their identity, right? You as a man, you as a woman. What does that human experience for you looks like? It may be some similarities between you and I, but there will definitely be uniqueness in our lived experiences. So when I realized that every human being has to go through and has to suffer, if you will, some challenges, depending on your approach or your thinking of it, then it was easier for me to process and accept what happened. So it wasn't necessarily my fault or somebody else. It was just an experience that we had, and I did not necessarily at the time have the tools or the equipment to help me to solve it, to figure it out then. So I became a victim of it. But now I have the tools of acceptance and how to negotiate human relationships and human interactions, and so that helped me to then make better choices in the present, but also to undo the emotions that I had held on to for so long. Does that answer your question? Long-winded version?
Appropriate, but yes, it certainly does.
I think I just deflated you.
No. You're fine. So as you're speaking, I'm holding my breath because of, listen, I've heard that story before. Okay, this isn't anything new. Again, we've had these stories. These are conversations that we have at the dinner table, and we choose to have them again because we know how important they are. But hearing it again, it still is I have to hold my breath when I'm hearing it, and then I don't realize I'm holding my breath until you stop, and then I exhale. I'm like, damn, without using profanity, but damn, it's a whole lot for one person to handle. It is a whole lot for one person to handle, and it sort of puts things into perspective when you look at your own lived experiences, because you start to realize two things. One, what you're going through might not be as bad as you think it is. Okay? Now, this isn't to take any emotion away from anyone's lived experience, but it's just to say that when you put things into perspective, there might be a solution that is much closer than you realize. Okay? And that actually is the second point. It's like the solution might just be right there. You just have to stop and process the information. Right. Okay?
Sometimes the solution is complex and that it requires a many-pronged approach. And sometimes the solution is simple. Like in my case, the solution was acceptance. Hey, something happened to you. No, move on. You don't remain stuck there. Life doesn't end here. Life continues. The journey continues. But the challenge, or at least the beauty, was I was continuing. Like post that trauma, now I'm back in the civilian world. I'm working, I'm in college, and I'm attempting to achieve my goals. But along the way, I was still dragging my past with me. So the past was not necessarily a hindrance, but it was my backpack, always on my back. It's like, hey, I'm here. Hey,
Right.
I am here.
We're backpacking
Right?
here.
So I was backpacking every day, my challenges of yesterday. I hadn't accepted it and leave it and moved on from yesterday. So yesterday was still happening all day, every day.
Right. And that prevents you from focusing on the todays and tomorrows.
Completely.
Yeah.
Because I remember my first semester of college, the grades that I achieved was for me terrible, you know? No A's.
You were
Right, just B's. No, one A, I believe, but B's and C, one C. And I was quite devastated. I've never seen grades like that before. I don't like it. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. It must be all A's, or otherwise I'm going to not be in the best of moods, you know? And so I didn't attribute the grades to the challenge I had. I just attributed to, well, you're working and you have an apartment. You should give up your apartment and you should quit your job. So, and you can only focus in school. And that's precisely what I did. I quit my job, I give up my apartment, and I move on campus. And I said, everything's going to have to sort itself out. It's going to have to be figured out. And so in that process, then I began achieving the grades that I want. But I didn't stop there. I went even further and take on more degrees towards my caseload, right? But every day the backpack was still on my shoulder. Hey, you remember me? You remember what happened to you? So that required a lot of time to unpack, and hence the solution, which was simple. Accept what happened to you, be sad about it for a moment, and then let go of it now. It's over, right? It's no longer happening. In the future, these are the safeguards that you will put in place to take care of yourself more effectively.
So would you say that the acceptance part is the easy part? Is the application of it just as easy?
No, the application is not just as easy. The application of that acceptance is not easy because sometimes you become accustomed to that emotion of shame and humiliation. And other times it's the perception of it. What you might accept it as a solved matter, but will others accept it as a solved matter? Like if you tell that story to others, are they going to be as accepting of you or accepting of your transition? And oftentimes I find, one for myself, I was interested in people's acceptance of my acceptance. Like I want people to accept it the way in which I'm accepting it. Don't accept it and say behind, well, he may have moved on, but I think he's a fruitcake. There was those perceptions of, what are they going to say? What are they going to do? So I spend too much time caring about what others are going to be thinking and feeling and wanting, rather than what my own truths were.
But then you would say something to me, which is why I asked the question. You would say to me, it is that simple, Joel. Once you know the answer, you accept it and then you move on. And it's as simple as that. So you can change your entire life instantly. If you choose to, once you have the knowledge, and then you choose to accept that as the way forward from now on without giving care to anyone else's thoughts, feelings, or emotions pertaining to what it is that you know and you know is right. And I tell you, that right there is a challenge because you're not battling anyone else anymore. You may use that as an excuse, but you're battling yourself. Right. You're battling that acceptance of, okay, I'm no longer the timid, insecure person that had their lived experiences. I am now the assertive, mature man who's going to live his life for the purposes that he chooses, right? Righteously. And yeah, man, I asked that question because certainly in my own experiences, I realized it is the acceptance and the knowledge and the acceptance is the easy part. It's the application that can be really a challenge, and it takes a lot of self-reflection. It can certainly help when you have communication, but telling yourself that you are no longer, that you can let go of that backpack and go.
one of the things that helps is the conversation we have with ourselves. So like every day when you wake up and you are preparing to start the day, some folks use mantras, you know, a mantra that you say to yourself that positively restates or reinforces your core truths and that you hold on to for the duration of the day, and then you release it at night, and then you pick it back up again in the morning. And those mantras are very helpful. I had one that I used quite often. It was really simple, and it was very effective. And it was, you are a man, you are just a man, and you have the abilities, just as everyone else, to be victorious. So go and be victorious. You know, just that simple. All day, every day, you're a man, just a man, right? Therefore, nothing else matters. What experiences you have does not matter. What it does, it sort of seasons your pot. It means you are flexible or you're useful to do as much as you can because of the experiences that you're gaining. All you're doing is gaining new experiences, some of which may be pleasant and some of which may be unpleasant. But that's really what it is. Our thinking, however, about the experience that we're gaining compromises at times, when we allow it, our mental preparedness or our mental health. And here's where we become sometimes in conflict with ourselves. What we must accept and move on, we're not accepting and move on, we're accepting and doing something differently. So now we are compromised, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Sergio. Your experiences in the military and then beyond is certainly something that I've learned from, and I think that a lot of people are going to find incredibly useful. The story is a sounding board that many people can learn from, whether you're in the military or not, whether you've had that experience or not. Having such a traumatic event and sets of events happen to you, and then being able to pull yourself out of that is, by yourself, by the way, is something commendable. Truly, it's one of the reasons why I respect you so much, because I think the quality of care that you have for yourself is the same expectation that you have for the people that you love and that are in your life, right? So that same level of care for yourself, to pull yourself out of that hole, to bring yourself back to a peaceful quality of life, that right there is something that you expect of all of your all of your family, and also if they don't have it, you want to help them get to that point. And our community, our clients, the people who come and receive our services, they are a part of our community. They become a part of our family by extension, because we want to be able to provide that very same service, that same help that we were able to give ourselves, that we were able to give to one another, and be able to share it with them under the Brothers Building Blocks umbrella. So, truly, thank you for being so candid, for being so transparent. I know you like your privacy. You are a private man, okay? So truly, that I think the reality of that is that it'll go far, and people will appreciate it. I appreciate it. So thank you for being here, and once again, thank you for being my brother, my business partner. And let's keep building blocks.
Cheers.
I know that there's a lot of people attempting to manage their mental health. So truly, I trust that this is an episode that was able to connect with a lot of you folks listening and watching out there. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. If you haven't done so already, like and subscribe to our channel and follow us on our social media platforms. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And we are having casual conversations with you. Today's introductional... Why did that word even come out? Introductional is not even a word.